is boundless energy, appearing as sitting in a seat, appearing as a computer that won't work, appearing as a Zoom meeting that crashes, appearing as laughter, appearing as walls, appearing, all there is energy. And this is the illumination of that, that all there is nothing being everything, aliveness. And in that aliveness, there arises, it appears, a sense that there's a me who's alive. So there's life and there's me with my life. And it's a really felt energetic feeling in the body. It's not an idea. It's a really felt feeling of looking out at what appear as other people. So I have a life and that other person has a life and I have control over my life. They have control over their life and we're interacting and we're all moving in time and space. So it's a very causal reality in which one thing happens, then another thing happens, and this is the lived feeling we have as individuals. Obviously, feeling like an individual is unique to every individual, but in general, that's a lived sense of duality. So it's not that there's an individual who's in duality, it's that duality, the individual itself is dualism. And that's the reality for the individual. They feel they're in a world in which they have a life and they can make choices and bring things about and they're moving forward in time. The difficulty with that is that it's very dissatisfying. It's a subject-object reality. And subject-object is very simple. It's that the sense of the me, the individual, is the subject, and then everything is an object to that subject then. So that's the kind of reality the individual appears to live in. So they're looking at, I'm looking at the wall, it's an object to me, you're an object to me, everything is an object. So it's all me, me, me. And everything in the story then confirms that. So the story tells you, you are an individual, you do have choice, you have a life and so on. So energetically, there's a sense of unworthiness in that because everything seems to have been lost, and a dissatisfaction in that subject-object reality because it's living in the real. Everything is solid and real, but nothing is actually as it really is. And that's sensed. There's something, and it's, for some, it's sensed much more than for others. For some, it's barely noticed or not even noticed at all, really. For many, it's not noticed at all. There's just a sense of being an individual who has this going on and that going on, and there's not really a sensitivity, and that's the way it is. For others, there's a real sensitivity that there's something about me having a life and me with my life that's just not adding up. There's something, and then there's a kind of a yearning and a search then. So for many, it's the spiritual path. There's a sense that maybe a scene that what I'm yearning for, I'm not gonna get it through money. I'm not gonna get it through status. I'm not gonna get it through my career, my job, these things that people tell you. There's a kind of a scene that it's not that. So it must be something maybe not without, it must be something within maybe. And then when they hear messages that go within, what you're looking for is within. So it's, if you practice meditation and you practice mindful awareness, or you practice, and the list goes on and on and on, then you cultivate this sense of being more present, and you be closer to what you're looking for. And eventually you may find what you're looking for, and others have found it, and their sense of self has fallen away through this progress of progressively doing things, and they meditated for years and then they fall away, whatever it is, the story. And so we feel in the story, there's that reality. There's examples of people who've done these kinds of things, and they're there, and I can get there too. And then that's what appears to happen. People do these kinds of things and they feel that they're making progress. And that's also just what's appearing to happen. There's nothing right or wrong with any of this. It's just all a play of light. But this communication is different. It's the direct illumination that there's just already simply what's appearing to happen. There is no separate you, and there's nowhere to get to, and there's no one to get there. And this is what we're going to share all afternoon. And energetically, that can be sensed. Energetically, there can be a sense that I'm not being actually spoken to, that sense of the being an individual isn't being entertained, because all you're being seen as is unconditional love. All you're being seen as is nothing being everything, appearing as that body that you may think you inhabit, that you may think that you're in there, that there's a you in there. But this is the exposure that there is no you, there never has been. And so there always has just been just aliveness, actually. So when you felt like a separate individual you, what was yearned for always was not you getting something, not you knowing something, not you having something, was actually a loss, an apparent loss. And the loss was of the sense of there being a you. So it's not a gain. If anything, it's a loss, an apparent loss. And when that's indescribable, then that sense of not being separate is, nobody can ever describe that. And yet it's just stunningly ordinary and simple, and whatever appears to be happening already. It's sounds of music drifting up from below. It's walls, it's chairs, it's sensations in the body. It's whatever appears to be happening is simply energy, and that's all there is. Energy is nothing being everything, and that's boundless, unconditional love. So what was yearned for when you were felt like a person has been never left you. It's always simply been here, but you've been lost looking for it, in a way, because you've been the apparent you is just this loop of me that appears to just go round and round, a false center. And all of that knowing as a person, as an individual, is simply within that loop of me. Knowing is simply within that loop of me. It's the closed loop of knowing of me. It's knowing me and knowing the world I'm moving in. The more I know the world, the more I can keep myself safe, and the better deal I can get, and the better, more comfortable my bubble of me can be. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what appears to be happening. But this suggestion is actually what's actually yearned for is just simply whatever's appearing to happen. And there never has been a you. So we share this afternoon, and it appears that questions will come up, and it will appear that an answer will come up here. And there's a discussion in that way. But actually, this is not about information or knowing or anything. It doesn't matter if you're sitting there completely bamboozled and confused, or you're sitting there and you really understand conceptually what's been said. It makes no difference whatsoever, because this is all energetic. It's all concerned with a resonance and energy. And that's energetic, contracted, really felt contracted sense of being in there, looking out on the world, and just suddenly it's not there. And then the adventure of just what's appearing to happen. Possibly, there's no way of knowing, because already, the incredible thing is already, there is only that already. There is only that already. And that sense of being separate is just an overlay. It's an artificial overlay. So there's no goal here, there's no agenda, there's nowhere to get to, because you are already boundless, unconditional love. And that's all there is. So let's see what happens. Yeah? We'll do the mic again for people on.
So, as you said, it's so funny because there is no outside and there is no inside. And it's so funny when you think that there is this here you and here is something and there is something else. And it's so funny.
Yeah.
And when you think like you have to be seen, you have to be visible by others.
In what way?
That I don't know, that you exist.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody, that you have something, or it's just like, it's whatever, like, I don't care. It's like,
the part of the game is that I am somebody. So I just make sure there's no So the whole game of being an individual is I am somebody, and the whole story is be somebody. So be important, you know, be, and the whole thing is look at me, I'm somebody. So that's energetically, it's a huge energy goes into optics of how do they perceive me, you know. Look at me. Do you know that I'm a very important person? Do you know what I do? Do you know my job? Did you see my car? Did you see my new Tesla? It's outside. Do you want to have a look at it? You know, it's all this game. Yeah. Yeah. So that's all the game of the, yeah. And it's like we could talk about that all day, obviously, how that is, because that's just plays out in many, 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 many different ways. But and it's sometimes it's so obvious when we feel there's a real me, but then we look at other people and we can see the artificialness in what we perceive as other people. It's just very obvious. Oh, this guy thinks he's really important, and he's going around thinking about what the neighbors think of him and what people think of him, and he doesn't realize that nobody gives a fuck.
Or it can go the other way, that we think we are the only one, the fucked up ones, and everyone else.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Also all together, like,
that's a part of the story too. Yeah, yeah. There's a real sense in being an individual of unworthiness. Yeah. It's a huge sense of unworthiness, and it's generally kind of hidden. People often hide it, and there's a real, as you said, there's a real sense that everyone else has their shit together, and I'm the only one who kind of feels like this, really, because I can see they have their shit together, because I can see their Instagram, and they're on the beach, and they're like, yeah, this is the artificial optics. But the sensitivity, what's being suggested here is that not the sensitivity, the unworthiness is directly from having lost wholeness. Because there's a me, and if I feel there's appearance of a me, and I feel that there's a me now in this room, an individual, then everything has actually been lost, really, because there's now the world and there's me, there's little old me. And that's the core, really, of that unworthiness. That's what's being suggested. And then in the story, a very common part of the story is to feed that unworthiness and verify it in your reality. So the individual's a filter. So we'll filter what's appearing to happen to confirm the story that I am unworthy, is a common one. Or the flip side of that is that I'm the dog's bollocks. I'm amazing. I'm more amazing than any of you guys. And actually, that is two sides of the same thing. Yeah, it's all about I. Yeah. It doesn't matter, actually. Yeah. So when you see this narcissism in the world, it's the same thing, because as someone said once, a narcissist is the most important piece of nothing in the universe. And really, that's what they're saying, is that at the heart of narcissism is a terrifying sense of nothing and of being nobody. Terrifying. And over that, then you get this sense of superiority. It's a paradox. Yeah. But it's all optics. It's all a story, yeah. Hiya. Berend, hiya.
I was in the park this morning, and two ladies were taking pictures of each other. And the one sat on the bank and the other was taking the pictures. And I said, sit down together on the bank and I make a photo of you. So I did this. And one lady said, I have a present for you. It was a little card. And I said, what's about this? She said, it's about God. Jesus will save you.
Ah, lovely. How nice of her.
Very good. So I am saved now.
I was thinking there was something different about you from yesterday. Because when you popped up on the screen, there's kind of this light behind your head.
Yes.
And I thought it was the lighting in the room, but now I can see you've actually been saved.
You got it.
Oh, that's so lovely.
So, Jesus will save me, and perhaps you can say something about this.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's obvious. I can see you're saved. So it's good old JC. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
He's such a great guy.
Yeah.
He's such a great guy. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't really need to be here now that you're saved by Jesus, really. But anyway, you're just kicking it now.
Yeah.
You're just kicking it, yeah.
Now we hope that he's going to save us soon.
Yeah, maybe we'll get a transmission because I can feel the resonance of your voice carry. Yeah, the resonance of your voice through the room. So your voice, which has been healed by Jesus, has filled a room in Prague.
Okay.
With healing energy.
In the dungeon.
Yeah, well, it's not a dungeon. It's not a dungeon. It's not a dungeon. It's not a torture room. Honestly, I swear. It just looks rustic.
Maybe now we'll start singing gospel or something.
Yeah, maybe. Years ago, I was in a market in my hometown in Galway, and two people came up to me and they said, did you know that Jesus loves you? And I said, okay, come here, let's talk. And 10 minutes later, the guy was going, okay, I gotta go. I can't fucking listen. I gotta go. I can't talk to you anymore. I said, well, come, no, don't go yet. And I just asking him questions. Like, who's Jesus? Who is this guy that you say?
It just maybe emanates satanic energy or something.
Yeah.
Too much emptiness.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just, these are all ideologies and paradigms and belief systems. And there's nothing wrong with any of this. So if someone believes in JC and that's what's happening, that's literally just what's happening. But it's just, it's a concept. It's a story. That's what I mean, exactly. It's just a story. When I say paradigm, belief, everything, all of that equals story. You just believe the story, yeah. So, and then because in our we really feel the individual's a real thing, then believing in Jesus, it becomes part of our story then. And it's important, yeah, and it fits, like the way we as individuals tell our story is a sense of, we find meaning in everything. So when that particular story and that meaning resonates with you, then it just is integrated, and it goes until it doesn't.
And it gives you a big hope.
Oh, hope, absolutely. Yeah, I hope that we can go to the river one day and see, can we take a picture, and next thing we're saved, like this lucky gentleman here. Yeah, hope. It's all about hope. Like, this is hopeless. I don't know, did anyone figure that out yet? This communication, this communication here this afternoon is totally and utterly hopeless. Because hope is actually the individual. If you even think about hope is a energetic sense for something better than what's appearing to happen. So it's in the future. It's something in the future that might happen or could happen, and it's not this. So the whole energy of feeling separate is a hopeful anticipation of something that's better than a dog barking and music coming and sitting on a chair, and aliveness is something, it's a rejection of what appears to be. So it's a person that needs hope, yeah. Of course, yeah. What is there to hope for? When there's just this, there's nothing to hope for, because this is, like, how can there be something to hope for when this is boundless unconditional love? When this is nothing pragging, I mean, what is there to hope for? It's only the individual that hopes for something.
Yeah, and then when you have this narrative, yeah, that you stick like Jehovah's Witness or whatever, and then there is like other alternative narratives and then they clash, yeah. So it's like either there is resonance or there's like either Jesus will save you or you hate this message and then the judgment starts. It's like
whatever. Yeah, it's a clash of belief systems. So if you're really like as individuals, we're kind of trying to almost overpower each other or make, so the energetically, the sense of being an individual is you see somebody else. So because you feel like somebody, you're seeing somebody else. So when you meet, you kind of have to either, this happens very quickly actually, you have to energetically see, is that person in my team? Or are they against me? So you're either kind of, yes, what can they do? How can they help me? And if they're on my team, then what we'll do is we're safe together. So we can talk because we're safe, because we both dislike Trump, for instance. You know, he's a horrible yellow man, orange man that, you know, so let's talk about Trump then, and we all feel safe. And then, but if you're a Trump supporter, then you're to be, oh, I'm going to overpower you now, and I really dislike you. I cannot believe you, horrible, horrible person. How could you do it? And so this is this is what we see in the story, is a constant trying to overpower somebody or feel that they're okay. And that's sometimes why people feel a little bit, if someone's on the fence, they're kind of a bit unnerved by that. Because you're kind of not with me, but you're not against me. So that's why you often, yeah, it's kind of like,
there's air, and you're trying to throw something
in the air,
and you hope that something will
it kind of
yeah,
because they don't know really where to fit you. Then it's like, have a fucking opinion, please.
Don't be so undefined.
Yeah. But and that's what we're seeing in the story, in the apparent world that we're living in the story, is this enormous polarization of views and people energetically, of one trying to overpower the other, and nobody really listening. And it's if you see it as just a play of light and energy, it's really kind of, you could boil the whole thing down to a sense of, energetically, there's a growing sense that authority is empty, that there's no authority actually. There is no, because authority is directly from the sense that there's a me. Because if there's a me, there's a higher authority that will mind me or whatever. And so that's kind of falling apart energetically in many ways. And then there's that's why you also see that appear to get more controlling, more restrictive, more as it appears to be threatened. So the control gets greater. Yeah. So in the story, there's a huge energetic control thing, and it's energetically, it's both. It's kind of and that's all concerned with the sense of separation. But it's also not even really happening. This is the amazing thing, is that like it's only, things are only real and really happening when there's a separate you. Because when there's a sense of separate me, then I'm moving in time and space, and it's one thing happens, then another thing happens in that causality, and that's the reality we live in. So that's the sense of everything being real, is directly from the sense of separateness that appears to be there.
And then it gets so real and like real and serious and heavy.
Oh yeah.
We have to have stance like on something.
Yeah.
We have to take action in the world.
Oh yeah, it's all about control, because we are the ones who can save the planet, and you know, all of that. We were talking a bit about that yesterday. Yeah, so it's control. Control is a huge aspect. Obviously, it's one of the central aspects of feeling separate, because if you have a life, then you have control over your life. So that's what you see in this neurotic play with people, is this desperate sense to reinforce that they have control. And actually, the beautiful thing is that there's no you there. There's nothing to control, and there's already no you even in the whole thing. There's just a play of light in what appears to be happening. And what appears to be happening is just completely unknowable. If you think you know it, then you have to be separate from it, because it's so directly just what's appearing to happen that it's completely beyond the mind, because it's nothing being everything. This is nothing rooming, peopling, sharing, pragging. That's all there, and that's all there is. There's no boundary to that. There's no, like, everything is actually just a story in that. There's only the appearance of time and space and all that.
Can you say something? Because I watched one video of yours when you were saying that sometimes the apparent individual can get like really caught up in the story. I mean, like in the seemingly endless cycles of getting it and losing it, getting it and losing it. And it's like the more you like get caught up in this cycle, like there is emptiness, and then there is like I lost it, and then another occurrence of emptiness. You mentioned something that yeah, it's like so somehow it's like it gets more like it tightens up even more. I don't know, like it's just like,
well, it's just
you mentioned something about outside help. I don't know, like something that there might be like outside impulse, or it can appear that if there is outside impulse to this tight closed loop, it seems to move things forward.
No, I don't. I'd say it doesn't sound like anything I've said. I understand. I see you could be confusing me with someone else maybe, because there is no outside or inside, but I don't know, but we'll talk about it now anyway. So, so there's just what's appearing to happen. There's just energy, right? And energy appears as I said in the beginning, in the John Lennon wall, freedom, there's boundless freedom, and a boundless freedom appears as imprisonment and limited. So limitlessness appears limited, of course, because if it's totally limited and free, it will also appear as not free. So the sense of being an individual appears to arise. Energetically then, that sense of being an individual can just not be there. So the sense of being the person, the story they have, they will have whatever narrative they have about that. So if they're a Buddhist, they would say there was an awakening or a satori, I had a satori, or I had a glimpse, or whatever. And different religions, if you were Christian, you might say the Holy Spirit descended on me, or whatever it is. And that's fine, because you can only view through your lens of your understanding of the world. So that's what appears to happen. Actually, nothing even happens. It's nothing appearing to happen, but the appearance is that contracted sense of being a me just isn't there. And there's just aliveness. And then when you appear to come back, because usually you do, it's most common that the sense of me comes back. There's a big question then of what happened there. And then you get 1,000 different people telling you, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. And then there's this communication, which is more available now, which is communicating directly that nothing actually happened, and that sense of you just wasn't there, and now it appears to be back. And appears is the word, you see. It's not really back. So then energetically, what you have then is this kind of play of feeling contracted, not feeling contracted, feeling there's just what's appearing to happen, then not feeling that there's me, that it's happening to me. And some people call that, like, it's frequently called like that mean and being, which is a nice way. You often hear people describing it like that. So it's mean as in there is me. I am sitting on this chair, I am talking to you. And then being, where there's just speaking to you sitting on the chair. And then that will only just play out like it plays out. There's absolutely no way you can influence that, because it would be the same as if I thought I could influence it, then it would be the same as me speaking to all of you now and addressing individual people and trying to affect your sense of individuality and bring about a sense of that collapsing. And if I were to do that, this communication would be completely different energetically, because it would be me seeing an individual and then trying to do something. So it would only be in the story, and it would only reinforce the story, because I can't see an individual, because there is no individual. All there is life, aliveness, bodying, and all there is boundless unconditional love. That's all there is. So if someone says, well, I'm in mean and being, that's what's appearing to happen. It's all just energy.
It can happen that it's like in the story that there's like it stops mattering. It just doesn't matter.
Oh yeah.
And it's so cool because then it's just like whatever it is, and it's liberation. It's like just enjoy it, like the rough part, the fun part, the liberated part, the freeing part. Cool.
And it can also be seen that it's not even really happening.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of game over. Yeah. So it can just be seen that instead of the realness of that, oh, there really is mean and being, that can kind of collapse. And then therefore then there's just what appears to happen. And in what's appearing to happen, a sense of contraction could arise, but the difference would be then it may not arise for anybody. So that's what's been illuminated here. There's only aliveness, and in aliveness, anything can appear to happen. Pain, pleasure, feeling contracted, not feeling contracted. The difference is, though, when there's a sense of being an individual, there's a real sense that there's something really happening and it's happening to me. So then it would be that I feel contracted, and that's exactly it. For many, it is exactly like you said, that there's a sense of play of in and out, and then it's just a sense that that's what's appearing to happen, and it doesn't matter. So therefore, the wish for it to stop or anything just collapses, and then it's game over in a way, really, because there's just what's appearing to happen then. You know.
How about you mentioned before maybe about physical activities, like when the energies, for example, like this tight contraction loosens up in the body, like that, like movement helps, or like apparently helps.
Oh yeah, but what we were that's the conversation we were having before the meeting started, and we're just talking about movement. And in the story, what people find helpful in the story is if they're kind of caught in some sort of thing, that the movement of the body, and it's an interesting thing. But that's in no way applicable to what I'm suggesting here, because the difficulty with that is that the individual applies everything to themselves. So then what they would think is that I can move my way out of being an individual. And then there is even teachings like that. I mean, you know, like, exactly, yeah. So all of that would be, that's concerned for, as far as I'd see that, as states. Yeah. So the individual is in states. And what's been shared this afternoon has nothing to do with any kind of state. This is not to do with a state at all, any kind of state you can imagine at all. And it's not to do equally with an experience at all. So it's the individual is in states, one state or another state, and it might think about what's been suggested here in terms of some kind of experience they had before where they didn't feel separate or whatever, and imagines that to be what's been talked about. This is not a state, it's not an experience, it's not imaginable, it's not knowable, and it's just simply, there's no one here who's in any kind of state or anything like that. It's directly just that there's just what's appearing to happen. And then there's an in-loveness. There's an in-loveness by nobody with what's appearing to happen. Because what's appearing to happen is simply unconditional love. Yeah, it's a causeless joy for nobody.
Okay, I have another question. You're wearing a t-shirt with tequila.
Oh yeah.
How does searching for altered states of consciousness like booze or mushrooms or whatever, like psychedelics tied into that. Like
it's back to what we were saying about states. So it's very interesting for the individual to explore that different states of being. And in one way, it gives somewhat of a relief to the sense of being separate sometimes. So the contracted sense of being separate can be a little bit altered by some sorts of substances sometimes. It's almost like, if you think of it in one way, there's this kind of story of me, the me story that keeps going and appearing to keep going. And then certain substances can just break the me story. And it's like you're taking a break from yourself sometimes. Another way of saying it would be like a comfort for the loss of wholeness. And then everyone is different with that. So something would appeal to one and wouldn't appeal to another. And none of it has any meaning whatsoever. No meaning whatsoever, because there's nobody doing it. And there's nobody not doing it. So what's incredible, yeah.
Mushroom therapy or something.
Oh no, I mean, depends what substance you're speaking about, because I mean, they're all so different. So you could be actually drunk in the gutter. You could be drunk, intoxicated, and the sense of me could fall away. It could happen, and it has happened.
Like
Yeah. So I mean, that was
like so strong for you.
Yeah. So then the person who is maybe dedicated to some spiritual practice and has been doing it 20 years would find it very, would get possibly quite angry that you're telling me this guy has been drinking down in the pub and he just fell away and he was drunk as a skunk, and I've been putting 20 hard years of meditation. Yeah. So it has nothing to do with any kind of state, or it's totally irrelevant. With the whole fascination with psychedelics is, it's interesting. There's been a huge surge in it in the last kind of decade, and it's gotten very, very popular. And in the area of non-duality, there's a whole area of non-duality, which is non-duality and psychedelics, So there's an idea out there that through psychedelics that you can lose your sense of separation. So this is done, like one of the more common ones would be ayahuasca, but similar with psilocybin, ayahuasca, and 5-EMO-DMT is one that's kind of the pinnacle of that, because that's the one where you completely you're gone. And people are very afraid of that, because sometimes it's probably the most powerful of all of them. So the way I view all of them is, it's just what appears to happen. And sure, the sense of being separate, for instance, with say psilocybin, they know the part of the brain that it activates, that the story of me that runs it just stops. And therefore it can be very clear there's no me, and the sense of separation and this sense of there just being energetically whatever is appearing to happen can be there. So I understand why people would think that they could do psychedelics and not be there. Yeah, but the problem with it is there's nobody who can do that. And the difficulty also with it is, if you think that you're doing psychedelics to drop the sense of me, it reinforces that there's a you there who can do something to not be me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what you end up with, and I've been watching this for years. It's very interesting, actually. What you end up with, the best I could describe it is, say if somebody takes something, ayahuasca or one of these things, and there's essentially an experience, and they would report that experience to be not feeling separate and everything. But what happens is, really the sense of being me is there at the other end to collect it. And it collects the experience, and then it says, I took this, I wasn't separate, and now what they have is an idea or an experience then, which then it's logical that they would go and chase. So they want to do it again and again, and it's kind of logical also that if the more that they do it, the better the chance they have of not returning as an individual. But it's completely futile. It's gorgeously futile, because there already is no individual. So if you keep doing it, all that's happening is the sense of being a separate you, just continually being that I can do. I've heard of someone that took ayahuasca like well over 100 times.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so their idea was if I just keep taking and keep taking. At some point I won't come back. And I actually listened to what they were saying. It was very interesting. They really had a sense that there's less of me every time. And it's so gorgeous because it's just a story. Because if you're only a story and you're not there, how can the story get rid of a story, you know? But maybe they're having a lot of fun. I don't know, puking into a bucket and.
Plus, I think like if you experiment like with the other stuff, I don't know, ayahuasca is 5-DMT or something, it might get so explosive that later on it's like kind of in the story difficult, for example, to get it back, this like to function in the society, for example, I don't know, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, like
so, like
yeah, I mean, well, like they're certainly interesting. You know, when people talk about drugs and then they say, "Oh, the drugs," and they just talk about as if it's like fungi and all of that, those psilocybin, all those things are just lumped into the same as say cocaine and amphetamines. They don't actually know what they're talking about because they don't know. So they are interesting in the sense that what I would say about them is, I think what's happening, appearing to happen in the story is the sense of the story of me can be so solid, right? That if people use psilocybin, and this is how it's been used, say therapeutically, it reveals that what you think is real is actually a story. It's just a story. And that in itself then is how people can feel. It's quite interesting. You hear people who do it once or maybe twice, and that's it. And they don't really feel the need to do it again, because what was revealed in that was that their story that they felt was completely solid and real is completely empty. And all they were doing was reinforcing that reality all the time. It was just going around and round. And that's the part that would be my take on why people are finding it useful in that way, because maybe you don't have to go on years of medication. And that's the problem for some industries that are they're not like it so much, because if you can do one thing one time and there's no business after it because there's no money in it. So I mean, I totally get why people are into it. I mean, mushrooms and fungi themselves, I find them fascinating. I think they're amazing. So I think it's an interesting area, but I'm really, really clear when it applies to this. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So the idea that you can do something, take something to not be there, that's all it is. Just, yeah. Otherwise, I'd be dishing out the mushrooms. You know what I mean? I'd be like, you know, I mean, if there was a way for you to not be you, surely to God, I'm not that, you know, much of a sadist. Like, I would say, okay, guys. Yeah, okay, I have my stall. You know, what do you like? What do you fancy? And just sit there, take that, and the sense of being an individual, it's just going to go away. I'll mind you. I'll hold your hand for a couple hours, you know, and you're just going to walk out of this door a few hours later and you won't feel separate. It's a nice idea, isn't it?
Well, they will make you rich, or richer at least.
Oh, yeah. And that's why, like, in the story, there's so many communications of people who feel, a lot of them are completely sincere because they feel the sense of separation isn't there. And it's because they meditated or because they did mindful awareness or because of something. And they sincerely want to help you to also, for your sense of separation to drop. But it has to be then a teaching of ignorance. It's not bad or good or anything, but it's speaking to a separate individual who can then do something to not be a separate individual. So it just goes, and they're the ones that, you know, you'd easily pack out a room with 50, 100 people, because it's the individual energetically immediately knows I'm good. I'm being spoken to. The individual, believe me, the individual knows when they're being spoken to immediately. It senses it. It's safe. And then this is actually very dangerous this afternoon. Because the reason it's dangerous is for the individual is it can be sensed. There's a boundlessness to this communicate. Just sitting here, all of us just sitting here like this, and this sharing here, there can be this boundlessness can be sensed. It's totally boundless, and it's unconditional love, because this is everything being a room and whatever. There is no you, or there's no separate whatever, and that can be obvious. But the sense then that maybe they're of feeling like a separate self is not, he doesn't like it. It can be very confronting. So at the same time, it's boundless. So often people would feel that boundlessness and feel the resonance, but also at the very same time want to run out of the room, really. And that's the part of them that feels separate. It's like, I don't, of course it is, because who wants to hear about their death, you know? The me's not going to be too happy about that. And that's why it's rare that it's an uncompromising communication is rare, and it's unconditional love is that compassion of seeing you not as the individual, not speaking to you, but seeing you as nothing actually, and nothing is everything. So I mean, what I mean, I've no words for that, because that is just so stunning. That is so stunning. When that is heard, it is so stunning, and it is there's no comparison whatsoever to a communication that sees you, speaks to you, and feeds that sense to you. It's completely different. It's oil and water.
Once I heard from one non-duality teacher a statement that completely puzzled me, and it was like, I know that there is no separate self, but I am giving a practice as a form of compassionate concession to the separate self, and I was like, so stunning for me, like, yeah.
99.99%. Yeah, nothing. 99% of communications are absolute nonsense, and the vast majority of non-duality is not non-duality. And it's not, it's just an idea. It's someone who speaks to someone. And like non-duality has actually become quite popular over the last, say, decade, right? And it's absolute nonsense. Just in the same way as if you go back, say, about 12 years, 13 years, you saw the Power of Now, and Eckhart Tolle was very big, yeah. So now, and then, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just what resonated with people. And then out of that, then that kind of went like that. And then you saw mindfulness. And I said at the time, I said to a friend, if I write a book, I could write a book now, and I guarantee I'd make a ton of money, because I can see this is so, and it'd be so easy to write. It's the same stuff, repackaged. And that's what happens. And then what'll happen now is the mindfulness is going to be repackaged as something else. And it's all just something that you can do. And it's safe, and again, it's back to states, because you can experience states of oneness. So you could be in feeling that you're doing the power now, or you're living in the now, or you're being mindfully aware. You know, I don't just eat my breakfast anymore. I actually eat my breakfast mindfully, in mindful awareness. Yeah, you greedy fucker. You just fucking go like that. I feel sorry for you. Me.
You are missing the mindful. Yeah, and it has to be so slow.
And it's funny, like if that's what's appearing now, that's okay, man. You know.
Maybe you can rewind it.
Yeah.
If we don't do it right.
What's that?
Maybe you can rewind it as a movie and do
Yeah.
it again.
Yeah.
If you don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why actually I got the tattoo here. Like I just said it now. But because I wanted to be reminded of being in the now at all times. That's why I got it. Like,
and I completely get it, because it's so seductive. I went to Eckhart Tolle. I went to see him in a meeting because it resonated, and it was so seductive to me. But I also sensed from the very beginning with him, it was something. Yeah, and not to do with him. Like, I'm not saying again. It's most of these people are actually quite sincere. They whatever, And what it was that, but that's fine. It doesn't actually matter if someone is a nice chap or not a nice, that's all a story. But here it was that there was just this. So the big question here was, there's just what's appearing to happen. So how can I approach what's appearing to happen? And I could never get an answer to that. And then there was meditation, and I said, well, if there's just what's appearing to happen, how can I get more into it if I meditate? And it was a real sense of meditation then. And then I would stop and I'd have my cornflakes. And it's like, I couldn't see the boundary and was just confused by it. It's like, there really is no meditation, really. It's a story. It could see it as, and then it all just collapsed really then. Yeah.
And that's why this message is so radical. Huh? This is something completely different.
Oh yeah. It's totally radical and totally.
So much loveness in that message.
Oh yeah, it's nothing like it. It's a communication that has nothing to do with Ken. It's nothing to do with anyone. It's totally impersonal, and it's indescribable. It's just from nothing, and it's one of the features of it that you've probably noticed over the last day and a half is that it doesn't come from knowing.
Yeah.
You know, so that's that can be very obvious to people, because they sense very quickly when someone is speaking to them from knowing. You know, the obvious example would be, you know, if it was knowing, I'd have the whiteboard down and I'd have my, you know, let's go through point A and point B and this, or even it wouldn't matter though, if I wasn't using, I was still speaking like this, you would get a sense that you're being spoken to by somebody who is talking from knowing. So they know what they're talking about. If the communicator, if the speaker, even if they don't call themselves a teacher, but if they know what they're talking about, energetically completely different. And this can be known logically because it's not that difficult. I mean, what I just said about subject-object and all of that, you could put a day's research in, 2 days research, and you could have that. And there are people who, they know it, they know the language of it, and they will say the language of it. But energetically, it's different because they know it then. And there's a sense of kind of, but that dangerousness, that edgy kind of danger is from unknowing. Yeah. And that can be sensed because there's nobody who knows anything. There's just a free fall, yeah. And there's just either a question or there isn't. Yeah. And there's no difference actually. You know, there could be apparent silence for half an hour and that it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. Like it would be no more, it has no significance. And it wouldn't be any, it's because it's all energetic, it's equally everything. So it can be just sitting there in someone. Yeah. The question, I suppose, yeah. He said, it's going to happen today again, Ivan. I'm going to try and repeat it. I said, well, you have to give us some cake next time. You can't be teasing us. He said he would, but we shouldn't talk about it with the online people. They get a bit upset. With the banana cake, because they can't smell it, no matter how hard they talk. I could see them yesterday trying to get a sniff of it, you know. Peter, we had they baked the cakes in here yesterday, and they came in and the door opened, and there's this banana cake smell. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, it's happened. We're trying to replicate it. But...
Yeah, now we are in the number.
Yeah.
Yes. Try space cake. Try space cake.
You which?
Space cake from Holland.
Oh, space cake, yeah. I think so. I think space cake would probably, that would really get us somewhere then. Don't mind your banana cake.
No banana. Space cake?
Yeah.
I took it once and landed in the hospital.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yes.
I like the way you said you took it once.
Yeah, I took it once, yes. And then it was finished.
Yeah, no. Oh, there's lots of fun to be had, you know, for the individual. Like the individual is intrigued by different states. Some people more than others. They're really intrigued by, you know, space cake, and it's just interesting to them to be in different states, and probably not winding up in the hospital, but that's what happened. But states are the gorgeous thing that actually, the amazing thing is that this just aliveness is so far beyond any banana cake, psilocybin, ayahuasca, even though they are amazing. They can be such amazingly explosive, fireworky states. Actually, what's not seen by the individual is that actually just simply aliveness trumps them all. It trumps everything. But for the individual, it's just it's kind of boring, because it's just this though. And the reason it's just this is that it's this for them. There's a sense of, I'm sitting on a chair and there's speaking to people and there's the computer, but like, it's kind of like, yeah, but like, so what? Like, there could be 100 people here and I could have an auditorium and it could be, then I'd be there, whatever it is. So that's the illumination now. Yeah.